actually. So there's an article you may have seen in Harvard Business Review came up recently that said that AI can take over mostly all of our jobs, including CEOs. Do I see some trembling hands? Shaking? Scared? Not scared? Perfect, okay. So while on the one hand we see stories like this about how AI can do everything and will do everything, most of the time when I'm teaching or talking to people, I still hear very basic questions of like, what is AI? How can I use it? Where should I implement it? Is my team using it? So today, we're going to compress about 3 weeks of content into 3 hours. So good luck. We're going to try and fully AI brainwash you so that you walk away with a very practical plan of how to implement AI. So I will do a bit more of the theory, and then Andrew and Richard will tell you what it's like in the real world. They have good stuff. Okay, so Tim already did this. That saves me some time. So I said it's going to be interesting. Laptops or iPads. And just go, this is just a redirect URL, but just go to this address here, flexui.org/AI-workshop. I know, you came here to listen to a talk and now you already got to get to work. You thought it was going to be easy? Okay, so if you go to that, you still have to register for the Wi-Fi first. Sorry. First start up your computer. Still seeing some boot screens. First start up your computer. Then log on to the Wi-Fi. And if anyone needs help getting on the Wi-Fi, then Tim will help, right? Okay, and then once, I'm spying a little bit. Okay, so once you're online, then you can go to this URL, and it will just redirect to a custom GPT that I built. It's on ChatGPT. Someone's zooming out their phone. That's a pro move. Very brave. Reaching. Okay, so once you're on this page, it's going to ask you 3 questions, and you answer them 1, 2, 3. Don't hit enter, don't hit send before you finish the full answer, all 3. And it's asking you 3 things. Number 1, what's a recent business challenge? And don't worry, it's just between you and OpenAI. This data will not go anywhere, will not be shared with your fellow participants or the organization here. Number 2, what's a personal achievement that you're proud of but that you rarely share? Again, totally confidential. Data does not go to me, does not go to anyone but Sam Altman. And number 3, who is a leader you admire and why? Who's a leader you admire and why? So you want to basically just write 1, your answer, 2, your answer, 3, your answer. And then once you've done all the answers, hit send. And then you're going to see the magic of ChatGPT at work. You're going to get a personal advice and quote, and so we'll hear from some people here what they got once they return. So raise your hand when you get to that point. So you go to this URL, it redirects you to a GPT, which means you got to log into ChatGPT. It will ask you these 3 questions in sequence, and you just write 1. Your answer to question 1, 2, your answer to question 2, and number 3, your answer to question 3, and then you hit send. I see some typing. If you're 5 minutes in and you're still typing about your business challenges, then probably you can wrap it up and move to question 2. If question 2 takes a long time, then well deserved. And for your answer to question 3, of course, you can put Victor in there. Okay, I see at least Andrew already has something back. Okay, you want to share? only the you can censor it.
What would you like? Oh, okay. Excuse me. So what, you just want me to read out? Significant business challenge, insufficient time. And so what do you want me to do with this? You want me to read what ChatGPT says? Time scarcity is a major pressure for executives, especially given the unrelenting demands of strategic leadership and daily operations. The burden you're feeling is common, but also an indicator of how much you aim to give your business the full attention it deserves. And it starts talking to me about empathy.
Beautiful. Any advice?
Managing time in today's fast-paced world is like trying to speed skate across shifting ice. There you go. You should understand that in Holland. Every decision matters. Your challenge reflects not only the busyness of your work, but the complexity and the responsibility that comes with it. It chose speed skating because of my next achievement.
Oh, so what was your proudest achievement? That you can probably share, right?
I can, competing in a World Speed Skating Championship.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Short track. Many years ago.
Did anyone notice about Andrew? No? Okay. Well, then it's no longer the answer to question 2 because now everyone knows.
Yeah.
Widely shared. Okay, anyone else has gotten their outputs? You got one? You want to share?
Who's next?
Volunteer someone.
You want me to give the mic to someone?
Who got?
Anyone want to go? No. Richard. See, you can
my star student,
right?
My star students.
I'll help out.
That means Jonah's next.
So my challenge was lowering direct costs. So it gives me some blurb on that. And my admired CEO was the CEO of Zappy, which is, it also gives me some blurb on and how innovative and agile they are in providing insights. And then it's got a quote for reflection. Do not cut costs, but rather build capability to absorb them. Only the capable, not the few, will endure. Wow. And then it gives me strategic advice on using zero-based budgeting for managing costs better.
Excellent. Okay, so you got motivation, inspiration, and a strategy.
Strategy would be would be too nice. Maybe a tactic.
A starting point.
Yeah.
Okay. One more. Yes, go ahead. What's your name? Sorry.
Michelle.
Michelle.
Morning.
Morning.
Okay, so I put rising interest rates, inflation, and global market volatility as my concern. I know I'm a banker.
Just small things.
True.
Yep.
I admit. So it says that clearly I'm grappling with forces that are reshaping the business landscape on a macro level, and it takes courage and foresight. For my personal achievement, I said that I am a great mom. So it says that's an incredible feat. So congratulations. And asking me to balance personal and professional responsibilities. I put Nelson Mandela as my great leader. And they gave me a quote: do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again.
After rising interest rates. Wow.
That's a nice one. And some strategic advice on championing visionary approach, staying true to North Star, and weathering the uncertainty, but thriving in it, and remaining focused, because the world is unpredictable.
So true.
It's
so profound
wonderful.
for this
It's
Tuesday
amazing.
morning.
Thank you.
Thanks, ChatGPT. Thanks, Michelle, for sharing. Okay, so now we've seen practically how ChatGPT, how AI can help, and it's very personal, right? It's like taking a couple of inputs and suddenly you get a fitting quote and you get some inspiration and you get even a small strategy. So this is really, and Colin and I were talking about it before, this is really what we're starting to see, right? AI sounds really scary, it sounds very techy, but it's actually a very human technology.
it may actually be the most human technology that's ever been invented, because when is the last time that you would talk to something tech and it gave you a Nelson Mandela quote? For me, it was today. So, if the internet works, So I'll show you example of, I'll just do it on the laptop, that's probably easier. So I'll show you an example of how human it actually is. Let's just share again. And AI is a wonderful technology, but you do need internet. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'll show you an example of how human it is. Yep. Do need internet. You want to plug in an internet cable? Is the Wi-Fi just too slow? This is a ton of video here, so everything's 10 minutes. Did we just collapse the internet by using ChatGPT with 50 people at the same time? Did the internet just crash? Okay. Hey, that's good. Sounds like we have time to get one more to share. Did anyone else want to share? Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah.
This is Bowen.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. So it's not in. So it didn't listen to the rest of it. Okay. It happens with AI. So a really great way, and similar, Colin and I were just talking. It sounds like we were talking for like 20 minutes, so it was just 5 minutes. So one of the things we'll get into is that AI is very human, but in some way it also really acts like a human. So sometimes you'll ask it something to do, and it will either ignore part of the instruction or it will not give you the right answer. So what would you normally do if, let's say, an employee did that, right? So you said 3 things and it only came back on one of them. What would you normally do? Not, throw them out the window, but. So a great way to follow up on that would be to say, oh no, actually, you only responded to 1 out of the 3. Can you give me the answer again? But taking everything into account, right? So basically just correcting it as if you're talking to someone. Is it working? Okay. Good. So with that question out of the way, great question. What's your name, sorry? Oh, keep it anonymous for now. Okay, so with that question out of the way, let's take a look at how human AI is. Yeah, gotta click in the, yes.
This is Bowen, and this is my friend Jordan. Can you guess what we are doing here?
Hey, Bowen and Jordan. Let me guess. With that cake and candle there, it looks like someone's having a birthday. Are you celebrating a special day or just finding an excuse to eat cake? Either way, I'm intrigued.
That's correct. Today is my friend Jordan's birthday.
Yeah, you got it. I was hoping that you could sing me the birthday song.
Of course. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jordan. Happy birthday to Jordan. Blah, 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 blah. Don't forget.
That was so great. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm going
you.
to make a wish.
You're welcome. Make a good wish and may it come true.
Yeah, always so motivational, right? So, okay, so we were just like typing some things in and getting some very personalized feedback. So this is where it's now going to. So this was announced last year, starting to roll out now. And we'll talk a bit more about AI in the future. But, here is basically an AI using a live camera feed, seeing what's happening around it, and talking in real time to you as you're a human, including singing you a happy birthday song. So 2 things we can take away from this: AI is very human, and 2, if you don't have anyone to come to your birthday party, just pick up the phone and talk to ChatGPT. Okay, so now we've said the word AI quite a few times, and obviously you got to acknowledge that everyone will come here with a different level of understanding, background. Some people have gone through a lot of studies, some people may be quite new. So let's start by just talking about AI itself, right? And especially in the context of what we were just talking about. Hey, I said do this, but it's actually not doing it. It's not listening to me. I already have humans to do that. I don't want AI to not listen to me. But AI is trained, is created to try and mimic a human, right? It's a computer system that's trying to mimic human intelligence. And without getting into the debate about what intelligence actually is, right? Whenever you're using an AI solution, that's what it's trying to do. It's trying to mimic our intelligence, right? And that's why it can help you in making predictions and learning from data and recognizing patterns, and now a lot more. So generative AI, that's really what's been happening over the last couple of years, right? So there's generally AI, which is this whole system that's trying to mimic how we think, right? That dated back to like the 1950s when Alan Turing wrote that paper asking, could we eventually develop computers that if we were to talk to it, we wouldn't even know it's a computer, or we wouldn't know that it's not a human, right? From that, we went into generative AI. So generative AI is only coming up in the last couple of years. And generative AI is a branch of AI that doesn't just recognize patterns from data, historical data, and then makes predictions about the future, which is something we call predictive AI, but it's actually creating net new content. So what you just saw in the demo that you did is that you're inputting certain things, it's going through the AI brain, and out comes it net new content. Now, Andrew and I have frequent debates about what is creativity and what is net new, but let's say that that combination of things was new in that form. And obviously, we really started to hear about generative AI when ChatGPT came out, November 2022. So actually, it's ChatGPT's birthday this month. Should we sing for it? No, okay. So ChatGPT came out in November 2022. It was the quickest platform to get 1 million users, and it was then the quickest platform to get 100 million users in just 2 months. So anyone here who has launched a product, if you get 100 million users in 2 months, you're pretty happy, right? It was quicker than TikTok, was quicker than Instagram, WhatsApp, Spotify, Netflix. It really went viral because people saw for the first time that there is this open box that I can talk to, and all this new content comes out. This is fascinating. And then we started seeing the spam LinkedIn posts created by AI, and we said, please, quickly, can we stop it? But there was no stopping to ChatGPT, obviously. So just in February of this year, it already went to 1.7 billion monthly visits. That's on the website alone, not even counting the app. So already bigger than Netflix, already bigger than Microsoft, already bigger than the New York Times. And in the latest, we run this report every month. In the latest report, we already see ChatGPT at 3.1 billion visits. So it's now a top 20, actually number 13 most visited website globally. So if anyone says like, oh, there's this new thing called ChatGPT, pretty much everyone is now on it. And they reported 250 million paying users. So again, if anyone here launched a product, when you get to 250 million people who pay $20 per month, you're pretty happy. They are by far the winner of this generative AI race. Even the second LLM, Claude, is like a very far distant version of that in terms of the amount of users. So as a result, now let's talk about what's important, not the technology, but what's important, CEOs. CEOs, this is the KPMG 2024 CEO Outlook study, say 68% say that now generative AI is a major strategic important, right? This is something that we're now all thinking about. Hey, if everyone is using this technology, what can I do with that? How can I use it in my work? How can I use it in my business? Second question, do you think you're going to get a positive ROI on this? Suddenly it drops from 68% to 21% in the first 1 to 3 years. But if it comes to the return in maybe 3 to 5 years, most CEOs again think that the return is going to be positive. And again, you get all the slides and I linked all the full study. So if you want to go through this in more detail, you can. But there are some challenges too, right? So all these CEOs now saying, including yourselves, oh, we should be using AI. It can do all of this work. It's so great. But then the other side of it is that most employees now say that my company doesn't have an AI policy. So can I use my personal ChatGPT at work? Can I put my customer data in there? Am I allowed to use it for the task? Can I tell my colleagues that I'm using it at work, or should I do it secretly? 32% of workers say that they're using unauthorized AI tools, and that's not even counting all the ways in which they can use authorized tools in very, very bad ways. And they say most companies don't have a budget for AI training, right? So there's a big gap between the CEOs who are saying AI is super important and employees who are actually feeling, wow, this is really something the organization takes seriously, and there's a clear mandate, there's a clear policy, and the tools that are being distributed work for me. And so again, what you really see is that 78% of people, this is the latest Microsoft Work Index study from June, 78% of AI users are bringing their own AI to work. So we call it BYO AI, just like BYO booze. This BYO AI, much less fun and much more dangerous as well. So 78% of people are now bringing their own AI to work. So you can just imagine all the nightmares that's going to bring, right? Because suddenly, you know, you walk around and you see a ChatGPT screen open, free version, all the data is getting sent back to OpenAI. What's happening with all that data, right? Where's all your confidential data going? Where's your company data, your customer data going? Huge nightmare. The second part that makes that really difficult is that 52% of people who are using AI at work are doing it in secret. So they have GPT, they have maybe a Claude or Copilot, but they're not telling anyone. Why would they not tell that they're using AI? They think they're going to lose their jobs. They're going to be seen as cheating on their work. They're going to be seen as, oh, you know, like you're just trying to find that shortcut. Yep, told you. All the links are in the document, right? So people are scared to admit that they're using AI at work. And so what problems is that going to create is that people are going to feel, you know, how do I best use this tool? We cannot share how to best use this technology if we're all using it in secret. Right? If we're all using it secretly, I'm using my personal ChatGPT, I'm not telling anyone that I'm using it, that's going to create another huge issue, right? So one big issue is going to be the data privacy. The other big issue is we need to learn this as a collective, as an organization, to get the most out of it. If we're using it in secret, that's obviously not going to happen. So another chart from the same Asana and Anthropic study, they looked at organizations, right? So all the organizations that they studied, where are organizations in their AI development journey? And very interestingly, what stood out to me immediately is that most companies, and probably most people, don't start with AI neutral. Sort of like, I've heard about it, I'm curious, let's see what this is. Actually, everyone starts at skepticism. Oh, I've heard about this, it's kind of overblown, it's overhyped, I don't think it's gonna work. Maybe you open ChatGPT once, and you said, who is the president of the United States? And it gave you the wrong answer because ChatGPT's knowledge is not up to date. And you say, okay, I'm never going to use it again, right? So most people and most companies start at AI skepticism. According to this study, most companies are now at AI activation stage. So if you're doing small AI pilots in your company, if you're doing small projects where you're kind of testing the water and getting people some hands-on experience with AI, that's pretty much where all the companies are right now. And then from there, that's where companies really start integrating it all the way to when you reach AI maturity. And that's basically where AI is just a completely integrated part of how everyone works. There you go. And that's not to say that this is all ChatGPT, because this is starting to sound like some kind of big ChatGPT advertisement, and OpenAI definitely doesn't pay me enough to be doing that. Plus, they already have 250 million paying users. It's definitely not just about ChatGPT, but it is the largest by far. So maybe just show of hands, who here has heard of ChatGPT? A few people. Okay, that's good. Claude. Okay, about half. Good. Microsoft Copilot. Okay, very good, very good. And Google Gemini. Anyone using Gemini? All the hands dropped immediately. Okay, but you're using Gemini? Right, what do you use it for? Okay, like the AI overview? Yeah. Very good. You're graduated. Perfect. Okay, already using multiple LLMs. one great way to defeat hallucinations is just use multiple LLMs and compare and contrast the answers. So yes, there are basically 4 major models out there right now. The thing that not everyone knows is that Microsoft Copilot is ChatGPT. So Microsoft Copilot is basically just ChatGPT with the Microsoft wrapper around it. So it's the exact same technology that you would be getting if you go to ChatGPT itself. Now, what is AI good at? What is generative AI good at? So there's really only a handful of use cases. There's a lot of downstream stuff, but there's only really a handful cases where AI has a very, very natural, very clear role. And we're going to be trying out some of that stuff. So get your laptop out of sleep mode. One thing it's really good at, with a caveat, is answering questions. AI is very smart, has learned a lot, very studious, can answer questions, but it can also give wrong answers. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But it can answer most questions. It's really good at creating content. So as we saw earlier, it's really good at creating content. It's very good at translating text. If you ever tried it side by side with something, maybe translate something out of Vietnamese, like for us, do it side by side with like a Google Translate or even Apple Translate, you'll see that it's usually the translations are way better. It's really good at summarization, creating images, voice mode we've seen before, data analysis, coding assistance, educational support. We'll have an example a little bit later on, and then more creative writing. So there's a couple of these use cases where AI, generative AI, really shines. So let's try it. Let's start by translating some text. So let's fire up the laptops. And I said here, go to VN Express, but you can obviously go to any website in a language that's foreign to you. But let's go to VN Express. If you are Vietnamese, then you will actually be able to fact check the translation, so that's even better. You can also do the other way around, obviously. And just open up any article, anything that piques your curiosity. So just go to the site, just open up any article, business section, sports section, gossip section, I don't care. Just open up any article. I see some discussion of like, can I open this? Can someone see it? Yes, just open up any article. Okay, have we locked in on something that we want to read? Okay, I see already some copy pasting, good. Okay, so then what we want to do is just copy the body text of that article. So again, you're choosing your article, so up to you what that body text is going to be. But just copy the text of that article. Very good. Yeah, I know, this is very advanced, huh? Copy pasting text. Really good value for money today. Okay, then basically once you've copied that text, let's go back to ChatGPT. Open a new chat so that we're not still in the good morning, how are you, here's some business advice. It may get confused, so open up a new chat. And then just write, hi ChatGPT, good morning. Could you please translate this article into English for me? Or if you chose an English article, can you please translate it into Vietnamese for me? Or any other language that you want to try. So could you please translate this article into English for me? And then just paste the entire content of the article under that. So could you please translate this for me? And then just paste the entire article under that. So far, so good? Then you hit send. And then if everything is working properly, you should be able to get a translated text from ChatGPT. Yes, you got one? See Andrew, yep. Translation, good. If you speak both languages, then you can fact check the translation. By the way, this works with selecting text, but this also works with screenshots. So sometimes if you have something on your phone and you cannot copy paste it, you can just screenshot it and you can just upload the image and say, can you please translate this? My wife always writes on Facebook in Vietnamese and I cannot read it, and to double check to make sure she doesn't say something bad about me, I usually screenshot the post and then upload it to ChatGPT and say, if it's not too bad, the content, can you please translate it to English? And sometimes ChatGPT says, let me just not do that. So paste the text into ChatGPT, ask if it can translate it for you. Are we mostly there? Yes. Okay. So now for the second one, so now we've done translation, which is very, very helpful. Now for the second one, let's do summarization. So just stay in that same chat and say, hey, ChatGPT, can you now please summarize the key insights from this article? So just type this in as a next reply. Can you please summarize the key insights of this article in 5 bullet points of 10 to 12 words? Because if you don't define enough, you'll find that sometimes ChatGPT can give you some kind of crazy long answer and you're like, hey, I don't have time to read all this. So please summarize it. Please summarize the key insights of this article in 5 bullet points, 10 to 12 words. And then for each insight, can you please add how it would apply to me as a, whatever is your title, in whatever is your industry, right? So please summarize the key insights of this article in 5 bullet points of 10 to 12 words. And for each insight, can you please tell me how this would apply to me as a CEO in the apparel industry in Vietnam, or as a founder of an amazing architecture firm in Vietnam? So please tell me how this would apply to me. So here we're starting to see really the generative powers of like, okay, I can find answers to questions, that's fine. Okay, I can do some translation. Now we're getting really into the personal side, right? You're now taking a piece of text and using both that piece of text and everything else that ChatGPT knows, or that generative AI knows, and making it personalized to you, customizing it to you. Okay, so based on this article, what are some of the key insights? And can you tell me how it would apply to me in my role as a XYZ at this and this kind of company? And again, you can be very rebellious and edit this prompt and personalize it even further. But if that works out, I see a black screen at Colin. That's not a good sign. Colin? Did you get something? Oh, you believe it. Okay, got it. For each insight, please add how this would apply to me. Okay, so if everything worked out, you should have received now a couple of insights, right? So maybe you copy-pasted an article. Probably the biggest news is the presidential election. So you probably got some article about how Trump won and what it means for the world. You first of all translated it into English, and then you said, okay, can you please summarize the insights and how they apply to me? And it basically will now give you some insights into, okay, how is this going to change your business? How is this going to affect you, right? So now you're seeing the power of, again, the overall generative AI model overlaid with a piece of current copy, and then the implication for you. And then the final step of this little exercise. Thank you. So next answer, next prompt. Thank you, because you never know when the machines take over. So let's try to stay friendly to them. Thank you. Can you now, going into creating content, can you now take those insights and actually write them as an email of maybe about 5 paragraphs of 2 to 3 sentences that I can send to my team, highlighting why this article is a must-read for everyone due to the impact it's going to have on our business, right? So we moved from, let's say you are browsing the internet. You're probably too busy to browse the internet, but let's say on an off moment, you're kind of like browsing, you come across an article, maybe you don't need to translate it, but in this case, we translated it. You then basically say, okay, take this article and tell me, what does it mean for me? How is this going to apply to me? And now as the final step, we're going to say, well, now I have all this information. Normally, maybe as a, in the previous era, I would have maybe fired up an email and wrote to my team, hey team, you should all read this article because it will show how this and this is going to impact our business. But in this case, you don't have to do it anymore because we have AI. So the last prompt is basically, well, now can you turn all these insights into an email of 5 paragraphs, 2 to 3 sentences that I can send to my team, that I can explain why this piece of news is relevant to me. Okay. And so now we basically went from piece of news, 2 key insights, to a piece of communication. And now if we wanted to have a lot of fun, we could even generate an image with it, but this is a very serious workshop, so we're not going to do that. Sorry. Okay. So I want to highlight a couple of shifts as you're maybe kind of like typing away and getting some insights and having a heated discussion and telling ChatGPT why it's wrong on the insights it's created for you. Want to talk about a couple of shifts in how we think about AI and how we implement AI. And then we'll go into the presentations from Andrew and Richard to talk about how I'm very wrong and how it actually works in the real world. But in theory, there are a couple of shifts that whenever I'm teaching, whenever I'm coaching, I always see these light bulb moments when we talk about AI in these ways. So the first one, I think Colin is going to get into this in his session as well. And again, you have a sheet in front of you. It was also in the pre-reads, where after the presentations, after the break, we're going to actually write down what does all of this mean for our business. So like as we're going through some of these shifts, think about how this would impact your business. Like in what team would you be introducing AI? How could you introduce AI in those teams? And what are some actions that you would take? So maybe start already writing down some notes as we're going through these shifts, because they're typically quite different from how we're looking at AI right now. And the first one I was saying, I think Colin is going into this in his upcoming session as well, is really this idea of whenever you're talking to AI, you're not talking to a machine, you are talking to a human. I mean, technically you are talking to a machine and it has no idea what you're saying because it's just a mathematical equation predicting what the right next word should be, something we're not going to get into today. Technically, yes, you're talking to a machine. But the way to get as much out of generative AI as possible is to actually treat it as a coworker, to actually treat it as a human, as a colleague. So what does that mean? If the clicker works, there you go. So for this, we kind of got to understand how LLMs, large language models, right, which is the system behind a ChatGPT, behind the Copilot, behind the Claude, and behind all the tools that are built on those platforms. We kind of got to understand how they work, right? So OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, they don't release this data anymore because they went from OpenAI to kind of closed AI. It's now a very commercial business. But before, it was really more a research business, and they were trying to create these models for the good of us people. And so during that time, they still release these academic papers showing exactly how they built these AI models. So whenever you're talking to AI and telling it to give you some business advice or translate an article for you or summarize something or tell you what that means, what it's actually doing is going through its entire digital brain, its entire neural network. And that neural network has been trained on a ton of data. So basically, whenever you're, and again, this is for the model before ChatGPT 4 and before ChatGPT 4.0, when they were still publishing this. So just imagine that it's this times 10 for the latest models. Whenever you're talking to AI, every single time that you say something, you know, when the reply comes back and it kind of comes back one word at a time, it's kind of like answering like that. It's going through its brain and it's thinking about what is the right thing to say here. And it's trained on all this data. So the data that went into ChatGPT 3 is Common Crawl. So Common Crawl is basically 250 million web pages. Basically any web page that's on the public web, OpenAI has read it in to ChatGPT's brain. WebText 2 is a collection of Reddit posts. So if sometimes ChatGPT or Copilot gets a bit spicy, it's probably because it's been trained on a lot of Reddit data. So 19 billion tokens, which is roughly 2/3 of a word, has been trained on all this Reddit data. It's been trained on pretty much every book in the public domain. And ChatGPT, OpenAI says that they've only used publicly, you know, works in the public domain, but obviously it's read a lot of books that are not in the public domain as well, because on that Common Crawl, there's a lot of websites that have book summaries or maybe even entire books uploaded. So basically every book that's in the public domain, it's in its brain, and then the entirety of Wikipedia. So whenever you're talking to AI, you have to just kind of imagine that all of this, and probably now times 10 because the latest models have read a lot more, that all of this is in its brain. And that's why it can be a great answer machine. Obviously, you have to fact check it, but you can also turn it into a really great negotiation advisor because it has read every article, every book, every course on negotiation. That's why it's a really great strategic advisor, because it's read everything there is to know about strategy, right? So it's read all of this. And that's why when it answers questions, it basically goes into the digital brain and it goes through all the data it has. And that's why it's able to give you so much. But in order to get something out of ChatGPT, you see, like whenever you open ChatGPT, and again, interchangeable for Copilot, right? Whenever you open Copilot, whenever you open ChatGPT, it's kind of like the Google homepage, right? It's just an empty box. And you gotta put something in, right? And so the input that you give is a prompt, right? So this is probably not super new news, the input that you give is a prompt. So the prompt is basically just the input that you give to ChatGPT. So every single time you ask it to do something, you're prompting. So congratulations, you're now a prompter. Then it goes into generative AI's brain. So it's going to go through all of that data that we just saw, and then it's going to give you the output, right? So even if you say, what's the weather like today? It's basically going through all of that data and then tell you, I have no idea because my last training was in November 2023. Because most of these models, there's so much data that they're being trained on. They don't know everything up until yesterday, like what Google was. It usually has about 6 to 12 months of delay of all the information it has. So then you get your outputs. But if we think about this through the lens of AI is really a colleague, it's really a human, and we want to talk to it in very human ways, then you're not really talking about prompting, you're really talking about delegating. So as we were just talking in this example about like why does it not take all 3 questions into account, you want to always give a lot of context. Because if you had the smartest human with you in the room, and we have all the smartest humans here in the room, right? And I ask something, you're going to have obviously a really great, don't laugh, that's true. We have all the smartest people here in the room. Actually, if something happens here in this room, oh, very, very scary, right? If you had that person in the room, you wouldn't give them like a 5-word instruction, right? Because that person may be the smartest person in the room or in the world. They don't know everything about your business. They don't know about what you've tried and what worked and what didn't work and everything that you have in your head. We're not at that level yet, right? Where we have the chip implanted and it knows everything that you know. We'll get there one day, right? So whenever you're taking this AI that knows everything and you're just saying something very broad like, write me a LinkedIn post about XYZ or write me a marketing plan about this or that, if you don't give the right amount of context, you're not getting much out of it. So whenever people say, or whenever even you felt yourself that, oh, AI, like everything that comes out of it is so generic, you know, it sounds so clearly AI written, not to shift the blame to you, but to a degree we have to think about, well, what did we ask it to do? Because if I ask you, can you write a LinkedIn post for me? I mean, you know, it's going to be the same post that you would write for someone else, right? If I don't specify what is my objective, what I want to get out of it, who is going to read that, and what have I already tried and what worked. So whenever we're using AI, we really want to delegate to it like a human, and that means, and this is why it's fun to run these workshops for you guys, because this is something you're very used to, right? But you can also see why more junior people really struggle with using AI, because they're not used to delegating. They're not used to, you know, giving some instruction to someone, and then in the human case, waiting about a week for the work to come back, only to realize that you instructed the wrong thing, or as we want to say, that they did the wrong work. So what we really want to do is whenever we prompt, we don't want to give a normal prompt, we want to give a super prompt. So super prompt is CODO, CODO, character, objective, do's and don'ts, and output. And all that this means, very fancy framework, all of this means is just provide enough context, right? So in the example we just did, I didn't say, can you summarize this article for me? I said, can you summarize this article for me in 5 paragraphs of 10 to 12 words and with the implications on my industry? The more context you provide, the more you tell AI what good work looks like. Hi, Chris, did you have a good flight? Welcome. Okay, laptop open now. So the more context you provide, the more information you give, the better the work is going to be. Now, if you've ever delegated to humans, you give an instruction, you wait maybe 2 to 3 days, you have to call them up or send them a Teams message and saying, hey, don't forget to deliver that on Wednesday. You finally get back the work, and it turns out it's not really what you were looking for, maybe because you left out some things in the instruction or in the delegation. At least with AI, the work comes back immediately, so you can course correct quite quickly. But at the same time, why go through all that hassle if you can just be clear upfront? So the more that you can be really clear upfront and give a lot of context of what good work looks like, the better the results that you get out of AI. And we're talking about this in the context of working directly in Copilot or working directly in ChatGPT or in Gemini or maybe in Claude. But these are really good things to understand, because everything that's built on generative AI and everything that's built on these large language models will have the same quirks, because usually those are just wrappers where someone has already pre-prompted the AI, where it's basically already told the AI what to do, just like I did in the exercise at the beginning, where I had already told the AI, this participant is going to give these 3 answers, and this is what I want you to do, and I will show you the prompt behind that. So we want to always give a lot of context, which includes, who are you? So this sounds maybe a little bit weird because when you talk to a human, you're just talking to that one human and you know them, right? But because ChatGPT has read everything in the world, because it's been trained on all the human data in the world, you can tell it to be, for example, a negotiation expert. So you could say, imagine that you are Chris Voss, the author of Never Split the Difference. I know one of Jonah and my favorite books, right? I'm dealing with this and this situation. How would you resolve it, right? Or when I'm stuck in some sales process, there's a really great sales coach called Matt Dixon. So I would say, like, imagine you're Matt Dixon and you're talking about the Challenger sale. I'm running into this situation. How would you resolve it, right? So by starting actually at going from ChatGPT knows everything to really narrowing it to what do you want ChatGPT to be today? You are a life coach. You are a therapist. I just need to complain about what happened today. Whatever it is that you want out of ChatGPT, by defining it up front, all the downstream output is going to be way, way, way better. The second thing is you want to define the objective, right? Again, we know this. Maybe here I'm preaching a bit to the choir. In good delegation, you don't just want to say, I need a post, a report, a summary. I do that because I'm trying to achieve something. I need to convince my board of something, or I need to create team alignment, or I want to go viral on LinkedIn, right? Whatever it is, you want to define the objective. What's the actual end goal of the piece of work that AI is going to do? Then, because AI cannot look into your brain, so everything you've learned in, let's say, the last 10 board memos that you wrote, you want to obviously brief it on what you have done already, and in ChatGPT and Copilot, you can upload entire documents as that reference point. And then, what should the final output be, right? Define it. Otherwise, you're always going to get back 5 pretty cliche paragraphs of information. So tell it that you want a super succinct email or a 3-page memo for a certain audience, right? The more that you define what the final output should be, the better it is. And again, AI will not go into all the technical details today, but there's a technology or a way of working called few-shot prompting, which just basically means give it examples. Because sometimes, what is the best way, and Matt, I'm sure you train a lot of people on strategy and on creative, right? What is the best way to show them how to write a really good strategy document? It's just to show them a previous strategy document, right? This is the one that we always use. This one works really well. Do it like this. So in that final step, you can say, create a strategy document like the attached example. It will then read that document in. Don't make it too long. It will then read that document in, and it will then output it in that same format, right? So the more input you give here, the better the output will be. And that is really the key to using AI as a human. Now, a couple of other things. One is that there is this idea, because I'm talking about ChatGPT a lot, mostly because it's helpful to understand the underlying technology before we get into all the AI tools you could be using. But it is not a matter of just using this one tool. It's not like you discovered Google and now every time you want to research something, you go to google.com, you type something in. Really what you want to do to get the most out of this, and I'm sure Richard and Andrew will show some examples of this, what you really want to do is to create an entire team of AIs. And we have some people who went through the course and built 10, 20, 30 AIs that are working for them. They gave them even names. He calls his calendar keeper Veronica, and he has a research assistant called Tim, and he has this entire team of AIs that he's basically using to do all his work, right? And what we want to do today is to start thinking about it not only for ourselves, but what if everyone in your company had a team of 30 AIs that was doing all their how much more would you achieve as a company, right? As an organization. Is that the cue that I should go off stage? Okay. So in my case, right, so I'm just one singular human. I have a lot of work to do, believe it or not. So I created a team like that, right? This is definitely not the full team yet. This is just a few of them. But I have, for example, my main LLM, so that would be the main generative AI platform I use. So I mostly use ChatGPT and Claude, although for research purposes, I also pay for Gemini and also pay for Copilot. So there goes my monthly budget. So those are the two main ones I use. But I've also created some custom GPTs, which are these like mini apps in ChatGPT, which we can go through as well, that are doing very specific things. So again, I've basically trained it on Matt Dixon's book called Jolt, the Jolt Effect. And so every time I have something that I need help on with sales, I go to that specific GPT, to that specific AI employee, and I say, can you help me with this case? And I don't have to explain anything. I don't have to write a long prompt because it's already in its memory, right? So we have a great little 1-hour workshop you can do to build your first one if you haven't done that yet. I have one for writing podcast questions. I have some AI automations. These are basically AI agents that are working behind the scenes. I can just be sleeping and the AIs are doing their work. So they're doing things like reading certain email newsletters, summarizing them in a certain format. Again, going back to that same idea of writing a really good prompt, but it's doing that on autopilot, right? So you hear a lot about Copilot. That is fully autopilot. I use Grammarly for answering emails, writing documents. I use Midjourney for image generation, Descript for podcast editing, Perplexity for research, Opus Clips for TikTok clips, Gamma AI for presentations. Reclaim runs my calendar. I haven't given them cool names. I probably should. Reclaim runs my calendar, Otter AI for meetings, and then I have another GPT, which is a newsletter editor, which actually I recently moved to Claude. So number 2 is really that it's not just about kind of using this one AI, it's really about creating this entire team of AIs that are doing the work for you so that you can go to cool workshops and you don't have to, sit in the office and do work. Now, one question that I get asked a lot then is, how do you then decide what should be done by AI and what should be done by humans, or what should you be doing together? So basically look at it very simply. GED, where generative AI tools make a lot of sense is when the work is general. So don't expect to be super specialist work. Like yesterday, someone asked a question of, I want to create this like flyer, and it should have this logo, and it should have these colors, and it should have this text, and it should have this image, and I just want to write that into an AI and let the AI do the work. That's not going to work, right? It needs to be general enough that someone, let's say you have this really smart human that has read all the information in the world, that they could do it. So it needs to be general. It needs to be error-friendly as well, right? So GED, E is for error-friendly. You cannot let AI do work. If you've tried, then hopefully you got away with it. You cannot just let AI do the work and send that as if it was your work, right? It's like, oh, I have to write this like client presentation. Let me just let AI write it and copy paste, boom, I send it to the client and they come back and they say, this sounds awfully familiar. You cannot let AI do work where you're not at least going to take it just as a first draft, and then you as the human are going to fine tune it, right? Which is still way better than starting at 0. It's much nicer to start at 80% with the first draft. It's way easier to react to existing work than to create net new work. But you want to do, you always want to do that check, and you want to make sure that you use AI in those moments where there is openness for errors. And then obviously it needs to be digital, right? So there was this image that went viral a while ago where you saw this scaffolding on a building, and it said, ChatGPT, please complete this building. ChatGPT cannot go on a scaffold and lay some bricks. That's not going to happen just yet. So it has to be digital work. But whenever it is general, whenever it is error-friendly, and whenever it is digital, it is definitely something where you're going to bring AI in. And if it's recurring, you definitely want to bring AI in. And that really goes to the next point, which is that a lot of people still feel, and hopefully after today you will never feel that again, that AI is really great every now and then, right? So you maybe have like 1 or 2 use cases, like whenever I need to summarize something or whenever I need some advice, I go to AI. Actually, what we're seeing from the data is that the more you use AI, the more you're seeing what other use cases there could be, and the more opportunities you see to apply AI. And the more that you use AI, the more productive you become, the more creative you become, and the more time you have for the things that matter. So we saw this from the same Asana and Anthropic study, that basically the people who have the most use cases for AI, that are basically finding opportunities to put AI in their team, put their AI to work, 8, 9 times, 10 times per week, they're actually the people that get exponentially more out of the technology. So if you're using it right now, every now and then, as sort of a research tool or a summarization tool, you're going to get so much more out of it once you take more the approach of whenever the work is general, whenever the work is error-friendly, whenever the work is digital, I'm just going to try it with AI. And maybe sometimes it will not work. That is fine. But the people who experiment, the people who try, it's trial and error. And they discover these use cases. They find out where AI works really well. They get exponentially more out of AI. And again, imagine if that works for you and you are 30% more efficient, more effective, if you're 40% more efficient, effective, and then you multiply it by all your team members. So you want to start really looking into this, and we did that, right, with quite a few people here, really looking into where can you use AI the most. And who is the most important? I mean, obviously in this room I would always say this, but who is the most important in that process is you as senior leaders. So the same Microsoft Work Index data is basically showing that the people who are using AI a lot, most of the time it's because they heard their CEO talking about generative AI. It's because they heard their CEO or saw their CEO using it in certain use cases, and we'll have a great case study a little bit later. They're 40% more likely to have heard about it from a leader in their department, and 42% more likely to have heard it from their manager's manager. Meaning, again, the more that in your company, the most senior leaders are talking about AI and using AI and showcasing not only success, but also failures. Like, hey guys, I tried this, it didn't work. Making it a very open topic, everyone is sharing. The more that people are starting to use AI, the more they use AI, the more productive they become. Okay, so let's look at a case study which brings a couple of these things together. And I really like this case study because it's really showcasing that when it comes to AI, it's not really about a company saying, okay, we're going to be using AI, guys, and this is how you use it. It's really about letting people on an individual level experiment, try. They know their work the best, right? The frontline workers know the best what they do on a daily basis, where AI could apply, and letting those employees try out where to use it. And you see this in this case study. The other thing I really like about it is that it's in a very regulated industry. And so, sometimes we have this excuse of like, but in our industry it wouldn't work, or we have all these, legal issues or restrictions. But this is a case study of Moderna, the vaccine maker. So they are highly regulated pharma industry in the US, but they made it work. So I'll show you this case study. I think it really brings together a couple of these concepts.
We believe very profoundly at Moderna that ChatGPT and what OpenAI is doing is going to change the world. We are really looking at every business process, from legal to research to manufacturing to commercial, and to think about how will you redesign those processes with ChatGPT type tools.
90% of companies want to go do Gen AI, but only 10% of them are successful. We haven't built the mechanisms of actually transforming your workforce to adopt new technology and new capabilities. We've been born as a platform company, and we think about our drug development as a platform. And with the onset of enterprise ChatGPT, these GPTs became embedded into the workflows of how our users are really using it. We're up to now 400 GPTs within 2 months, far more than what we expected.
Some might be surprised that the legal department was the first department to wholly adopt ChatGPT here at Moderna. We have a 100% adoption rate of ChatGPT and other generative AI large language models here in the company. One of the GPTs that we're most excited about is called Contract Companion. You can upload the contract into the GPT, ask it for a quick high-level summary, or even ask specific questions. And what it enables the legal function to do is to focus our time and attention on those matters that are truly driving an impact for patients, to allow us to deliver on our mission here at Moderna.
DoseID GPT really allows us to take these large data sets of thousands of pages and input that into the GPT. It makes an optimal dose recommendation from thousands of pages of data. It provides supportive rationale for why we're picking a specific dose over other doses. It allows us to create customized visualization so we can really understand the data. And it also allows the study team members to have a conversation with the GPT to analyze the data from multiple different angles.
I think we're very lucky as a company because we're going to launch 15 products in the next 5 years. But if you think about it, if we had to do it the old biopharmaceutical ways, we might need 100,000 people. Today, the company is less than 6,000 people. We really believe we can maximize our impact on patients with a few thousand people using technology and using AI so that we can scale the company. And so I'm very thankful for the entire OpenAI team and the time and engagement they have with our team so that together we can save more lives.
Okay, so obviously you can hear from the music that this is a marketing case study by OpenAI. But I think, where did I put my clicker? Let's see. I really need an AI. But I think it brings together a couple of these ideas, right? The GPTs that they're showing, these are like little mini apps that they built on top of ChatGPT. They didn't really say, you know, like, we're going to use AI and here's how you use it. They basically just said to every employee, every department, here's a little bit of basic information about AI. And they did a partnership with OpenAI. So they had the OpenAI team come into their office. They were in their Slack channel for a couple of months to provide support, to celebrate new case studies. But it basically left it to every team member, to every team leader, to find where in their workflow they're doing work that's general, error-friendly, and digital, and then build some custom apps towards that. So there's a couple of other case studies that do this too. And that's where the CEO, we go to the next slide. Yeah, well, that's where the CEO basically said, I don't know if you understand the deep French accent there, a company of 6,000 people doing the work of 100,000 people. So he said, if I were to build that company before generative AI, I would need 100,000 people to be developing new medicine at that scale. We do it now with 6,000 people because we have all these AIs working for us, right? So they basically really incentivized people, really made it exciting for people to discover where they could be using AI. And then they did a lot of sharing. So in this really great article, they really go through the change management side of it, where they said, every week in the beginning and later every month, let's get together and let's hear it from everyone. Where did you apply AI? Where did you apply AI? What worked, but also, again, what didn't work? And the CEO would go on stage and share where he failed and where things worked for him. This is really a process of finding out together where AI can work in your workflows and speed up the work that you do. Maybe it's finished. Okay, so then the last couple of things before we get into the practical presentations. One thing to think about, maybe if you're hearing all of this and if you're not quite there yet, like Moderna and doing this big partnership with OpenAI, that you feel a little bit behind or that you're kind of late to the party. But the truth is, again, we saw it in the Asana data. Only 30% of companies have an AI policy. Most companies are still trying to figure out, where do we really embed this technology? How do we get the most out of it? And as companies are implementing it, they're facing a lot of the challenges as well, as Colin was talking about, the psychological side of it, of people flat out rejecting it, being very skeptical. It's not going to work in my role. It's not going to work, right? But the examples are obviously too vast now to believe that, because we know that it works, right? But you're definitely still ahead of most companies, and you still have that advantage to basically say, okay, if I were to redesign my work or my team's work or my company based on how these totally AI-enabled companies would work, like what would that look like? And the final thing is, like, it's not just so much about AI in terms of like working quicker, right? As you can see from, let me go to the next slide. As you can see from that, the latest Gartner hype cycle, this is the hype cycle for the future of work. we're basically over the peak hype. So we're really getting into generative AI is now becoming more embedded. People are using it already. And it's starting to become something that companies are now finding out, okay, how does it actually work? And, oh, there you go. So many. I'm clicking to Tim now. And again, this is not so much just about technology. It's not that you suddenly have to become a programmer overnight. You don't have to become an engineer. The VP of Microsoft HR Global, Chris Fernandez, said you don't need to be a technologist, but you do need to have a plan. You do need to have an adoption plan. You do need to think about, how do I get my team to understand some of these fundamentals of AI? How do I get them to experiment? How do I get them to create those GPTs and those ways of using AI? And then you can do a lot more than what you're doing today, right? So another big part of that is that all of these things before AI, I wasn't a podcast editor and a clip maker, right? I was just a PowerPoint generator, basically. But I'm doing a lot more now because it's giving me all these capabilities that I didn't have before. So it's not just about doing the current work that you're doing faster, but also thinking about, what can I do now that I couldn't do before? And then the final thing, again, we saw that in the GPTs. You know, these are these like mini apps. You can build them just by talking to AI. It's not just, you know, whatever is available to you, oh, and that's how AI works. It's really about becoming a builder, taking this engineering mindset to really scrutinizing your workflows and thinking about, how do I do my work? Where am I spending my time? And then finding the applications to help you do that work better, faster, and open up these new flows of work. So those are the 7 things that if we just change the way that we think about AI, that's really where we start to get most out of it. And that's where you really see the people who have fully achieved AI mastery, that are really using it in all facets. That's what they're doing differently from everyone else. And now that you have these secrets, you can become like them too. Later on, we'll go into some very specific applications. So beyond just ChatGPT, what can you use? How can you use it? And then we'll write sort of a plan for how are we going to embed it into our business. At the end of this, we'll also have a couple of examples of what's next. So these are all kind of the basic things that have been around for at least a year now. What are some of the things that are still coming up, which is very interesting to look at as well. But before that, I will hand it over to Richard to talk a little bit about, that's the theory. Now, how do we actually do it? Okay, over to you.